First, let me introduce the IPDCP, International Port Development Cooperation Program, under the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, MOF, and Korea Cooperative Supporting Center for Overseas Port Development, run by the Korea Ports and Harbors Association. These are the topics of my presentation. We will look into the background of the International Port Development Cooperation Program, IPDCP, and I will briefly explain the IPDCP and its procedure. Then, I will introduce Korea Cooperative Supporting Center for Overseas Port Development related to the IPDCP. Also, let's have a look at Chapter 4 to see what kind of activities the KCSC is pushing for the project to turn it into actual businesses. Finally, I will explain about Port Workshop, one of the major international cooperation activities of Ministries of Oceans and Fisheries in Chapter 5, and wrap up the presentation. Let me start. After the Korean War in 1953, Korea was one of the least developed countries in the world, recording $67 of per capita income. However, in 2019, the number soared to 40,000 in less than a half century, achieving the miracle of Han River, representing expeditious economic development in the Republic of Korea. As of 2020, Korea is an export powerhouse, with the world's 5th in manufacturing and 10th in terms of GDP. Behind this great economic development of Korea, harbor played a pivotal role. Ports and harbors are important factors in promoting international trade because they are closely linked to commercial and industrial activities that directly lead to a nation's economic development. As prerequisite facilities for economic growth, they induce and lead direct effect of promoting shipping and trade, and the indirect impact of developing relevant industries. Ports and harbors are the core infrastructure of international trade, as about 90% of the world's trade volume is handled there. Due to the geopolitical nature of Korea, surrounded by the sea on 3 sides, expansion of maritime transportation through port construction was essential for overseas trade. And, due to the nature of a small population, it has an export-oriented industrial structure that imports, manufactures, and exports raw materials rather than domestic consumption. Logistics is very important in this environment, and there are ports at the beginning and end of maritime logistics. In the 1960s, the Korean government implemented a strong export-import drive policy by promoting a 5-year economic development plan to foster secondary industries, including light industry, heavy industry, and export-oriented economic growth in order to promote economic growth and improve people's lives. Accordingly, the construction of ports for the import and export of cargo was inevitable, and along with the import and export drive policy, government focused on building necessary infrastructure such as roads, ports, and railways. As the share of secondary industries increased, the volume of imports and exports were on the rise due to the nature of Korea, where natural resources are poor. The increase in the proportion of secondary industries caused the nation's overall import and export volume by importing raw materials due to the nature of Korea. The main method of production is to import raw materials from abroad and export them after processing. In this way, the export and import sectors were able to see a dramatically rapid increase in maritime traffic volume. From the lagging port situation in the 1950s to the 5-year economic development plan in the 1960s, Korea saw exponentially rising volume of imports and exports. Ports have been developed based on the creation of cargo volumes, and port construction is still going on. Korea's ports continue to grow under the initiative of the government, focusing on import and export ports and industrial ports for securing raw materials under the export-import drive policy. Timely port development makes rapid and smooth import and export possible, and it can be said that it has well supported the rapidly growing Korean economy. About 99% of Korea's import and export cargo is transported by vessels, and its trade dependence is over 70%. As it has an export-oriented economic structure based on manufacturing industries, such as semiconductors and automobiles, considering cost and efficiency, the sea road is irreplaceable. As you can see on the map, Korean ports have grown with regional specialized industry and industrial hinterland complexes. Since the liberation from the Japanese colonial rule, ports have played an important role as infrastructure supporting the balanced regional development and manufacturing industry growth led by the government. Through a strategy to make specific cargo distribution bases covering nearby areas, ports and harbors could become specialized and scaled up. For instance, main ports for container cargo are Busan Port and Gwangyang Port, and most of the liquid cargo is handled by Ulsan Port, Yaosu Port, and Daesan Port. Specific cargo logistics-based strategies in nearby areas were established, focusing on Busan and Gwangyang ports for container cargo, and Ulsan, Yaosu, and Daesan ports for liquid cargo, and ports were specialized and enlarged accordingly. The advantage of Korea's port development method is that the technical officials of the central government had decided the location of ports in response to the areas where cargo volume occurs, such as downtown areas, for balanced regional development. In addition, the port was built in a short period of time with large budget and legal and policy support. Busan Port is the representative port in Korea for that. Busan Port, Korea's leading port, handles 70% of the nation's container volume. Busan Port was the first trade port that opened in 1876 during the Joseon Dynasty, and its development began in earnest from 1906. As the economy grew after the Japanese colonial era, the existing facilities, unable to handle cargo, Busan Port Piers 1, 2, 3, 4, and Central Pier were built from 1941 to 1945, the end of the Japanese colonial era. From the 1970s, the government began to take shape, the Busan Port Development Plan, and expanded the Busan Port by promoting the fourth stage Busan Port Development Project until 2001. The existing North Port was operating at full capacity, but the facilities were aging and water depth was shallow. Therefore, a new port is being built under the plan to foster high value-added industries by attracting transshipment cargo trunk line. The Busan New Port is developing two new ports, number 1 and number 2, and it has the largest cargo handling capacity in Korea. The construction started in 1997 and opened sequentially, starting with 3 berths in 2006, and some terminals are still under construction. In addition, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries plans to further solidify Busan's position as the center of logistics in Northeast Asia by starting construction of the second new port in 2022, where 30,000 TEU-class super-large vessels can dock. We plan to complete the port automation of the new port and expand and introduce the system to other ports by stages. As a result of the new port construction and promotion policy, Busan Port has secured its position as the world's 6th in container volume and the 2nd in transshipment volume, handling 21.6 million TEU of containers as of 2019. The global port development of such world-class port was supported by the government's policy. The port policy, which had been urgently developed reflecting the needs of each region, was changed in 1995 with the establishment of the National Port Master Plan. Accordingly, the policy began to be systematized by developing and fostering ports that considered long-term cargo volume forecasts reflecting domestic and international conditions, and calculated appropriate loading and unloading capacity for each port. Since then, the master plan has been established and announced every 10 years, and the revised plan has been provided every 5 years. As simple transshipment cargo has declined since the mid-2000s, the need for high value-added ports has been raised. Accordingly, in recent years, the port space has been recognized as a hub of the marine tourism industry. In the case of small and medium-sized ports with low cargo volume, aging and underdeveloped conditions, are now changed to a waterfront space that has expanded port recreation and utilization of functions by reducing their cargo functions and redeveloping regions. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, MOF, has been promoting the North Port redevelopment project in Busan Port since 2008 to foster a world-class new maritime industry hub where people and the sea harmonize. The North Port Redevelopment Project plans to build an integrated smart city around the North Port with the goal of making a global hub of new maritime industry. Taking advantage of Busan as the gateway and focal point of the continental transportation to Eurasia, we plan to foster the Port of Busan as a hotspot of the international maritime tourism business, so as to create jobs and a waterfront area where citizens can comfortably enjoy. The redevelopment project is divided into Phase 1 and 2. The Phase 1 aims to be completed by 2020, is a gateway and waterfront maritime cultural district, specialized in water-friendly historical and cultural functions, including international passenger terminal and an opera house, etc. Out of the 70% of the total project sites are planned to be public facilities sites. The project operator, Busan Port Authority, initiated construction in 2008 and will complete it in 2022. The second phase of the project, which will invest about $2 billion by 2030, is a project to create a center of all kinds of new maritime industries, including international exchange, finance, and resorts. It is scheduled to break ground in 2022. MOF has been conducting the International Port Development Cooperation Program, IPDCP, since 2008 to support economic development by sharing Korea's experience of port development with the governments of partner countries. IPDCP supports the establishment of a master plan and feasibility studies for systematic port development. The program employs a Korean consulting company, engineering, etc., with a lot of experience in port development according to internal procedures and provides services. The results are delivered to partner countries. The IPDCP is done based on the MOUs between the two governments. Korean side does its utmost to find optimal results by reflecting opinions and ideas through continuous exchange of opinions and cooperation with the governments of the partner countries, while Korean companies are conducting project. The procedure is as follows. Step 1. The government of the partner country sends a letter of the pre-project concept paper to MOF in Korea, requesting a cooperation project on ports in need of research. Step 2. Based on the pre-PCP submitted by the partner country, the scope of research and the roles of stakeholders in both countries are discussed. Step 3. If the two countries agree on the project based on the consultation of the second step, MOF selects a Korean consultant to perform the project through a bidding and delivers the results to the partner country. Step 4. If the MOU for port development between the two countries has not been signed, the MOU will be concluded. Step 5. After all these steps are over, the cooperation project will be initiated. Korean consultants and partner countries exchange opinions through continuous discussions, and official meetings between governments are held 3 times at initial, interim, final reporting seminars to share the contents. The final results are to be delivered to the port authorities of the partner country through a diplomatic channel. These deliverables are reflected to the partner country's national development plan, or can be used in various ways, including government funding projects or public-private partnership projects, PPP. Starting from a cooperation project with Turkmenistan in 2008, we are expanding our cooperation projects all over the world, including Asia, Africa, Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Pacific Island countries. As of 2020, we have completed more than 40 cooperative projects with 28 partner countries and continue to cooperate with them. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries established the Korea Cooperative Supporting Center for Overseas Port Development, KCSC, in 2015 to systematize the implementation of IPDCP, support international cooperation related to ports, and connect the Korean government and the private sector. The KCSC aims to support economic growth through port development of partner countries and strengthen the global competitiveness of Korean companies in the area of port industry. In addition, the center plays a professional role in managing information on overseas port development cooperative projects, finding ways to commercialization, connecting the project with other projects, and strengthening domestic and international networks. Major activities are: Number 1. Supporting IPDCP. KCSC actively supports overseas port development cooperation projects such as business information management of IPDCP, monitoring the direction of realizing a project as a business, and making a connection with follow-up projects. Number 2. Providing overseas port development information. By operating an overseas port development information service website, it provides information on the global port development trend, port infrastructure status by country and market. Number 3. Enhancing domestic and international networks. Integrated management of domestic and overseas people-to-people networks, establishing cooperation channels and strengthening international cooperation. Enhancement of global cooperation by offering business seminar, BIZ meetings, and international seminars for companies interested in entering the overseas port development market. Number 4. Operating Support Consultative Group for Overseas Port Development. The group was formed where the government, financial companies, construction companies, operators, shipping companies, logistic companies, state-run agencies, and research institutes participate in the aim of developing promising projects led by the private sector and forming a K consortium. A regular meeting every quarter is held to share each body's advancement strategies and project information. Not only that, a working level meeting is formed to seek in-depth support plans. Number 5. Organizing Invitational Port Workshop. The Center promotes joint development through mutual cooperation by introducing Korea's experiences in port development, including policies and infrastructure to promote, and sharing port construction and operation know-how benefiting for each country's development strategy. Like this, from the development stage of bilateral cooperation projects to the completion point of the task, the Center works as a contact point between the two countries during the overall period of the project, so it can be called as a coordinator connecting the private and the public. Even after the project is over, the Center continues to follow up the project by connecting information and seeking ways to utilize Korea's ODA fund, including IPDCP and support from KOICA to help ensure the project can turn to an actual business. After completion of the task, feasibility studies and establishing a master plan, the partner country can apply for KOICA funding, grant aid, or IPDCP, soft loan, run by the Korean government, depending on the nature of the project. In addition, with the aim of developing promising projects led by the private sector and organizing a Korean consortium, the government, private side including financial, shipping, construction, operating, etc., research institute, and state agencies formed a support consultative group. By holding the group meeting and business briefing event, the Center promotes IPDCP and explains investment opportunities and project details. Furthermore, KCSC is seeking various methods and supporting the project to an actual business in forms of PPP through collaboration, including signing an MOU between institutions. For example, public institutions that can invest overseas, such as KIND. In connection with MOF's IPDCP, the Center organizes invited port workshop for port development-related high-level officials and experts from partner countries with high demand for port infrastructure development to share Korea's experiences on port policy and technology and promote shared development between two nations. The port workshop is held 3 to 4 times a year and consists of various programs, including a bilateral, multilateral meeting in which the MOF and representatives of participating countries discuss port cooperation, lectures introducing Korea's ports, meeting with Korean businesses wishing to enter the port development market of partner countries, and cultural experience events. From 2014 to 2019, more than 160 port-related officials from 27 partner countries were invited to Korea to take part in workshops. KCSC is a coordinating organization dedicated to port cooperation under the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. It strives to carry out various activities, including capacity building program, cooperation projects, and invited port workshop with partner countries. The door of KCSC is always open, and you're more than welcome anytime. Thank you very much.